Welcome back. All right, 32 team video. Here we go. I wanted to talk today about players who've benefited from a change of scenery. Now, I wanted to make it more recent ones who've had a change in scenery rather than players who had a change of scenery like 5, 6 years ago. I did my best, so we'll go through the list of 32. You guys can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Players you think have benefited from a change in scenery. And I do reserve the right to do a 32 team video on players who might benefit from a change of scenery from where they are currently. So it starts with Philly, it ends with Arizona. I've gone in a random order. I just put all 32 teams on the board and just, there we go. So we're starting with the Philadelphia Flyers. For the Philadelphia Flyers, Owen Tippett. I don't know if Owen Tippett stayed in Florida if he would have become what he is now. And part of what has helped some of the players that are on this list is going to teams where they're going to get an opportunity to play more, getting an opportunity to play big minutes, getting an opportunity to show what they can do that they may not have gotten if they'd stayed with the team that had him before. And I think Tippett's an example of that, right? And a lot of the players on this list absolutely are examples. But I think Tippett's been excellent for Philadelphia. He's had some bad luck, and he's still scoring a lot of goals. So if his luck turns around, he could end up being a 30, 35 goal scorer this year. He's on pace for about 30. I think 35 is within his grasp, but even 40, again, depending on the Flyers' second half of the season. For Winnipeg, Velarde was very good for LA when he was there, but it does feel like his game's hit that next level in Winnipeg. Velarde, a player I've been a fan of him since before he was drafted, and never once said, "Oh, well, Velarde's a bust and that's it." That's it. Velarde had injury issues that prevented him from reaching the NHL. Once those were ironed out, he's been pretty good. He has suffered injuries this year as well, not related to, I believe it was his back that was keeping him out of the NHL for a long time. So that wasn't the problem for Velarde this time around. And yeah, he's around a point per game, and he's staying there. And he's getting those top line minutes in Winnipeg. Again, would he have got those in LA? I don't think he would have. It was a surprise to us a few years ago when LA decided to send him down to the minors when he looked ready. So very happy for him in Winnipeg. Vancouver, I thought about JT Miller, I did, but it's been a while since Miller joined the Canucks. I feel like that's kind of a cheat. And so I wanted to look at one who's more recent than him, and I'm going with Dakota Joshua. At the time the Canucks brought him in, they said they envisioned him as being a third liner. And the way he played last year, it looked like maybe they overestimated him a little bit. But this year he's been fantastic. And that third line, which does not have a name, and they tried to get Garland to name it today, and his answer was, "I'm not naming it," meaning it doesn't have a name right now. But it is a hard-working line. It's a blue-collar line, so it should have a blue-collar name for it. And Joshua is a player who could score 20 goals this year. Does he do that in St. Louis? Probably not. And so, yeah, I think Joshua's benefited from a change of scenery. Nashville. Last year there were points where I would say, yeah, Nyquist is still in the league. He's still an NHLer. And yeah, this year Nyquist has been arguably one of the most consistent forwards for the Nashville Predators. He has been very good, and it's been enjoyable to watch. So I feel like it has benefited him going to Nashville. There were a few players for Nashville I felt like I could pick, but I'm going with Nyquist. Again, you guys can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Boston. Pavel Zacha was a high draft pick, and it felt like that pressure in New Jersey was high, and in Boston the pressure's not there. It's not the same. So even though they've lost Bergeron, they've lost Krejci, and Zacha's playing a greater role with the team, it does not feel like he has the kind of pressure that he did in New Jersey, and he's performed well. This is a Boston team that has outperformed most people's expectations. Zacha's been a big part of that. There were other candidates. I thought about Coyle. Coyle's been very good. I thought about Geeky. Again, Boston's able to pick up players. This has been the case since I was a kid, where they would pick guys up, and I would think, I don't know what they're doing, and those players would end up being pretty good. So I've learned to trust Boston's instincts when it comes to picking up players, and Zacha's a good example. For Calgary, and you know what? I say this name a lot. I'm going to say it again here. Blake Coleman arriving in Calgary at the time. It looked like an expensive deal for Coleman, but he's turned out to be quite the bargain, hasn't he? Coleman is, I think, their best forward. You can decide whether that's praise for Coleman or kind of damning of the players like Huberdeau and Kadri and others that are there who have a bigger name, right? That's why Lindholm ends up in the All-Star game. I saw people asking, why is Lindholm in the All-Star game? He's the bigger name. But Coleman's the better player. And I agree that the All-Star game should be for the better players, but I also understand why they go for the names too. But yeah, I don't think Coleman's going to be all upset about getting that week off, and he's probably going to be excellent after the All-Star break as well. For Buffalo, does Alex Tuch get the kind of minutes he's getting in Buffalo if he stays in Las Vegas? Probably not. Tuch was a player that aggravated me a bit in Vegas when they were against a team I cheered for, because I knew at some time there was going to be a stretch pass to Tuch. Tuch could be on a breakaway, and there was a 50-50 chance he was going to score. And it felt like that was his role, was that he would kind of come out of nowhere. He'd get big goals here and there. But he wasn't a main guy in Las Vegas, obviously. Now in Buffalo, he's a chance to be one of the main guys. We can have that debate about whether or not Buffalo's, crafted a roster that can really succeed, and if Tuch should be in that role. But his production's been good. So his production off a little bit this year from last year, but it's still quite good. And I think the trade to Buffalo definitely helped his career. For Seattle, this wasn't a trade. This was a waiver wire pickup. It's Eeli Tolvanen. When Tolvanen was waived by Nashville, we were, asking some questions about how much upside was there. There were some who felt like he could be an excellent pickup on waivers, and others that thought, no, he hasn't shown it at the NHL level. It may not be there. Seattle has excellent pro scouting, and it shows when they pick up guys on waivers like Tolvanen, and he becomes one of their better forwards. And Tolvanen's been that for them. Anytime I watch a Seattle game, he's all around the net. He's very active. And Nashville's come out since then. David Poile's admitted since then that waiving Tolvanen was a mistake. So, I mean, you have that. It's not very often a GM would admit a mistake, but yeah, waiving Tolvanen was likely a mistake for the Nashville Predators. But they have Nyquist now, so they're good. St. Louis. St. Louis was not easy. So, with St. Louis, and again, this feels like it's the easy way out. Now, Buchnevich was very good with the New York Rangers. I'm not saying he wasn't. But Buchnevich in St. Louis, again, does it feel like he's more important to St. Louis than he might have been for the Rangers? I think so. If Buchnevich was back with the Rangers right now, would he be getting the kind of ice time he does with St. Louis? I don't think he does. And so I think it's benefited him being in St. Louis and being able to be one of the go-to guys. And he's excelled in that role. There's long stretches there where he may very well be the best forward that St. Louis has. That's including Thomas and Kyrou. And yeah, Buchnevich has been quite good for them. For Dallas, another former Nashville Predator on the board here, Matt Duchene, who got bought out, of course, at the end of last year by Nashville. And I understand why they bought him out. But he signs the one-year deal with Dallas. They have absolutely got a bargain in Duchene. The funny thing is he got off to a slow start. I was like, all right, well, slow start. At least it's a good contract. But lately he has been fantastic. He's been one of Dallas's best forwards. And, yeah, he's right back to, I think, where he was at the best of his time in Nashville. Or at any point during his career. And it's been fun to watch. So, and I'm saying that as a Dallas fan. For Detroit was too easy. Because I can't not put DeBrincat's name down. Now, DeBrincat didn't maintain the scoring that he showed early in the season, but he's been scoring well enough that, yeah, DeBrincat's really benefited from going to Detroit. I thought about putting Petrie's name up, but Petrie's numbers haven't been as high as you would think for him playing at home and all that. So, yeah, I'm going with DeBrincat. Again, there are others I could have picked for Detroit, but yeah, I'm going to DeBrincat. Lyon comes to mind as well, yes. So if you're wondering with goalies, the funny thing is, this first column, no goalies in it. There are definitely goalies on this list. Just letting you know. For Ottawa, there aren't very many players having really good years for Ottawa, but I will say Matthew Joseph, from a production perspective, he's producing more in Ottawa than I think he would have if he'd stayed in Tampa Bay. For Matthew Joseph, he's been a solid producer for them. He's played top 6 minutes at times, but he can play up and down the lineup. He's got good speed and energy, and I think going to Ottawa has been a really productive change for him. For the New York Rangers, now we get a goalie. Finally a goalie. Jonathan Quick. After Vegas won the Stanley Cup and Quick gets his ring, there was some conversations about whether or not Quick would just, retire, and I thought that might be the best move to make. Because, yeah, you get your Stanley Cup ring, you're winding things down, you're 38 years of age. It's totally understandable if you say, you know what, I want to go out while I'm on top. But now that he's with the Rangers have the record they have. maybe he wins back-to-back Stanley Cups with different teams and gets himself another Stanley Cup ring, which would give him Stanley Cup rings with 3 different teams. I may be getting ahead of myself, but Jonathan Quick this year, I think, has played better than he did last year, a lot better than he did last year. And so, yeah, it's nice to see his game returning, and it'll definitely give, I would think, the Rangers pause, and maybe they end up picking him up again for next year. Pretty sure it's just the 1-year deal he's on. So we'll see if Quick decides, you know what, this has been fun playing as a backup. My body's not getting beat up as much. Maybe it gives him more mileage to keep playing. For the New York Islanders, another goaltender. At the time, they picked up Varlamov. That's when they got rid of Leonard, and it felt like that might be a mistake. So, and I understand Varlamov has been there for a while, but I wanted to talk about Varlamov a bit here because he's had quite the season for New York. Now, he's currently injured, but when he's been healthy and he's been excellent. In fact, I think he's outplayed Sorokin for stretches this season. And again, at the time that he was picked up by the Islanders, it was seen as a bit of a head scratcher. He wasn't coming off of a great season. Leonard was, and it was seen as a big risk. And Leonard is currently not in the National Hockey League, and Varlamov is still an excellent goaltender. So the Islanders may have known what they were doing at the time. Carolina. Stefan Noesen needed a change of scenery. He gets it with Carolina. He performed really, really well in the minors, and he ends up getting to play for the Carolina Hurricanes. That's the dream. A lot of players in the AHL, of course, they have their eye on playing in the National Hockey League. AHL is really good hockey, but the best paying hockey is NHL hockey. So it was nice to see Noesen stick it out. Like, I'm not judging players that go over to Europe to get some more money and have a bit of an easier schedule and all that fun stuff. But for players who stay in North America and toil in the AHL or the ECHL and build their way up, I have nothing but respect for them for doing what is the less well-paid road towards being paid much better than you necessarily might be in European leagues. And yeah, Noesen, really, really solid for him. And so he's my pick for Carolina. For Columbus wasn't easy. Columbus, a lot of their talent is homegrown. So I'm going with a bottom 6 forward who I think has benefited from a move to Columbus, and Sean Kuraly. Kuraly's more prominent in Columbus games than he was in Boston. And I liked Kuraly, but I think Columbus does give him an opportunity to play more important minutes, and show what he can do. And Kuraly, I think, has done that for Columbus. I think he's been a solid producer. He's never going to be like a 50-point guy. He's never going to be like a top 6 forward. But he's performed well in Columbus, and I figured I'll throw him on the board. Washington. Dylan Strome. Dylan Strome has absolutely benefited from going to Washington. He is one of their most consistent threats offensively. This is a team that does not have a lot of offensive threats. They have Wilson, they have Strome, Ovechkin when he's in the lineup, sure, but Ovechkin's numbers this year aren't where they normally are. So it feels like Dylan Strome's one of their key forwards, which is a bit of a surprise considering where he was, 2 years ago? Or a year and a half ago, I guess, when Chicago decided we're not bringing him back. And he became a free agent. So, yeah, nice to see Strome land on his feet and do well in Washington. For San Jose, I don't even need to look at the paper because I remember who I wrote down because I didn't need to look at San Jose's roster to pick somebody out. It's Fabian Zetterlund. Zetterlund in San Jose has outperformed what I think any of us thought he was going to do. At the time of the Timo Meier deal, it just looked like New Jersey completely fleeced San Jose. That trade's kind of evened out since then. And Zetterlund's been a pretty good producer while Timo Meier struggled with production in New Jersey. So, yeah, Zetterlund's been a solid producer and one of their better forwards on a team that is not good. I'm not going to pretend San Jose's been a good team this year, but I think Zetterlund's been a good player. He's improved his stock at the very least. So if at some point in time San Jose thinks, we need to add somebody somewhere, Zetterlund might actually be an attractive piece now for another team to pick up. For Montreal, I remember liking Sam Montembeault when he was a Florida Panther, but since he got to Montreal, his game every year just seems to get better, and this year he looks like a starter in the National Hockey League. We'll see how long he's a starter for Montreal. Like, once Montreal's ready to be a full-fledged playoff team, and they're not in the position they are now, where they're, I think, 4 points out of the playoffs, but in reality, they're probably not making the playoffs this year. They should probably still do the sell at the deadline. I've compared it to Detroit last year. good record, but are they going to make the playoffs? Probably not. You're better off selling at the deadline. But Montembeau's their starter. They've given him that extension, and he's played well since he got the extension too. So it's not like he got his money and then his play fell off. Montembeau, I think, has earned every penny he's made. For the LA Kings, another goaltender. It's not that Cam Talbot had a bad year for the Ottawa Senators. It's that the Senators had a bad year in front of Cam Talbot. Talbot's numbers in LA, though, have been fantastic. And, he's a star goalie again. He did have a rough start statistically to the season. There was, comments and conversations about LA's goaltending and how it wasn't good enough. But I don't hear much of that now because Talbot's been excellent for the last couple of months. Now, that is with LA currently being mired in a slump. I'm still going to put Talbot on the board. I understand LA's been in a slump, but to me, Talbot going to LA has still been a good move for him, and I think it's benefited the Kings. For Chicago, another goalie. Told you there was a lot of goalies. Peter Mrazek. At the time Mrazek got to Chicago, what was the argument? Well, they have to have a goalie, so guess Mrazek gets it by default. Great. And Mrazek's been good. Like, he's good this year. I thought he was good last year, too. I'm not saying he's great, but again, if Chicago decides at the deadline, you know what? We're going to put Mrazek out there. With the goaltending being as shaky as it's been at certain places in the NHL, combined with all the injuries to goaltenders, if Mrazek can stay healthy, and that is a question mark with Mrazek. It's part of the reason he bounced around the way he has. But he's been quite good for Chicago. So if Chicago decides at the deadline, you know what, we'd rather keep him, I wouldn't necessarily blame them either. So yeah, Mrazek to me has been a pretty good story for a Chicago team that has had its struggles this year, but he's won them some games on his own. For Anaheim, there's only one real pick here for Anaheim. It has to be Frank Vatrano. He leads them in goals. His scoring's slowed down since a fantastic start, but he's going to the All-Star game. Vatrano in the All-Star game. I don't expect that to happen again, so I would think he will enjoy every single minute of the All-Star game, and it's players like him getting nominated to the All-Star game that's great, right? For some star players, it may be seen as, I don't know if I want to go, like it's their 8th or their 9th or their 10th. But a storyline like Vatrano's, he likely knows this might be his only chance to go. He's going to enjoy it. I wouldn't be surprised to see him have a really good All-Star game as a result, or at least All-Star weekend, right? For Edmonton, I wouldn't say Matthias Ekholm had a bad year his last time out with Nashville, but has he been better with Edmonton? I think he has. I think he's been fantastic for the Oilers. I've been a big Ekholm fan for a long time, and I think, you've got an Oilers team right now that looks fantastic. They've won 11 in a row. Ekholm's had his role in that. His production's been good throughout this run. His plus-minus is fantastic. It's all coming up Millhouse when it comes to Ekholm right now. And I think the move to Edmonton benefited the Oilers, Ekholm, and I think it helped to save Ken Holland. If there was any danger of Ken Holland anyways in terms of losing his job, I don't think there was. But the Ekholm trade would definitely make it more difficult to say, well, you're out of here, because that was a great move. For Tampa Bay, there were a few candidates for Tampa Bay. I'm going back to one that I've put on the board before when I talk about some of my favorite members of Tampa Bay, and that would be Nick Paul. Paul was a good player in Ottawa, but it does feel like his game took that next step when he got to Tampa. And, winning will do that. And finding the exact right spot for yourself in the lineup will do that. And it feels like that's what's happened with Tampa Bay with Paul. But honorable mention to Brandon Hagel because, and then there's Johansson in net. Johansson at times has been seen as, he's the worst goalie in the league. Why would teams pick him up? And while his number's not fantastic in Tampa, they're not awful either. For Pittsburgh, another goalie. Nedeljkovic at times has been their best goalie. It's been interesting with Pittsburgh because they've been very up and down. Goaltending too. At times Jari looks absolutely fantastic, and then he has some struggles. And then Ned comes in, and Ned's fantastic, and then Ned had some, and then you got Jari. So there really is a 1A, 1B situation in Pittsburgh, which is a bit of a surprise because the time they pick up Nedeljkovic, it didn't look like he was necessarily an NHL level backup. Maybe they need to bring somebody else in to be that NHL level backup. Ned ends up down in Wilkes-Barre. But instead, nope, Ned's been quite good. For New Jersey wasn't easy. I understand Dougie Hamilton is not playing and will not play for the rest of the regular season. They're hoping to get him back for the postseason. But when Dougie Hamilton signed that contract, he had a lot to live up to, and I think he has. I think Hamilton's been excellent for the New Jersey Devils. Not that he was bad in Carolina or Calgary or Boston, but yeah, I think he's done quite well for himself, and so yeah, that's my pick is Dougie Hamilton. Absolutely think that Dougie Hamilton has exceeded. Not okay. Exceed is wrong, but excelled in New Jersey. I think he's excelled. And anytime you talk about Norris around a New Jersey fan last year, you'd get. But shouldn't Dougie be in that conversation a little more than he is? I don't have a negative answer to that. For Florida, a player who might be on his way out. I understand Sam Reinhart's been in Florida for a while, and people may take issue with the fact some of these guys have just recently joined teams. Some of them haven't, but I'm like, just change the scenery. So in the case of Sam Reinhart, he's been fantastic in Florida. I don't think the way he's scoring now he would have in Buffalo because, right, he wouldn't have had Barkov passing the puck to him. But also the style of play in Florida suits him. It suits his game up and down, and so I hope Reinhardt sticks around. I would be very surprised if he actually becomes a free agent and goes anywhere else because I think it's the perfect setup for him and for the team. I don't know that there would be a more perfect fit elsewhere in the NHL. I will also put the asterisk on it of this. This is likely a career year. I don't know if he can repeat this next year because his numbers have been ridiculous. So you have to kind of factor that into negotiations if you're the GM, but it's a nice problem to have. Vegas. How long did Jack Eichel fight with the Buffalo Sabres about getting disc replacement surgery? And there were certainly people who backed up the Sabres and said, no, if it hasn't been done before, then they have a right to say no. It's dangerous. It's risky. We don't know what this is going to do. Eichel is the best Vegas forward and got the Stanley Cup in June. Was definitely a positive part of that team towards the Stanley Cup. It's not like they won it despite Eichel. They won it because of Eichel, at least in part. It was a really good team effort, and Eichel was a positive part of that. So he was called a coach killer earlier in his career, and there was a lot of he'll never be very good, and he's not the guy, and this is a mistake. Since going to Vegas, honestly, he's played quite well. He had a rough start in Vegas, but since that rough start, he's turned it around pretty nicely. I remember a lot of comments about how invisible he was at points last season, but those have largely gone away. For Minnesota, at the time Hartman arrived in Minnesota, it looked like he might be a bit of a journeyman. He might be moving around through a lot of teams. I stopped with Minnesota. And there's no reason to think that he's going to be on the move from Minnesota anytime soon. And it's benefited him. His scoring has been quite good for the Minnesota Wild. I think that he's been an excellent addition. So while Bill Guerin may be embattled for certain reasons, I don't think picking up Hartman, it was Guerin that picked up Hartman, right? Pretty sure. But yeah, I don't think that's ever going to be viewed as, well, that was a negative, shouldn't have got Hartman. He's been excellent for them for the most part. Which brings us to Colorado. My pick for Colorado, going back to goalies, Georgiev. At the time they pick up Georgiev from the Rangers, he wanted more time. He definitely wanted more starts. He knew he wasn't going to get them with the Rangers because Igor being Igor and all. So he goes to Colorado, and he's been the starter, and he's won a bunch of games. I do think they overwork Georgiev. I think they need a backup who can play some more games, so Georgiev gets that extra rest. I think his numbers would come up. But he's been quite good at points as well, and I like Georgiev. I always have. And so, yeah, we'll see if things continue to go well for him in Colorado and if he can win himself a Stanley Cup in 2024. For Toronto, so Toronto near the end, and it's another goaltender, and it's Martin Jones. So looking at the Toronto Maple Leafs right away, I was like, well, I can't pick Domi and I can't pick Bertuzzi because I don't think they've been better than they were before they arrived in Toronto. But Martin Jones, it's not just the wins either. Martin Jones, his numbers are fantastic since being called up. So last year, playing for Seattle, he had a great win-loss record. His save percentage, not great, and his overall play, not fantastic. He's been much better. He's been dialed in Toronto. So while the Leafs have had their struggles, Jones has been quite good. So I wouldn't put the struggles necessarily on the goaltending. If you're talking about Jones, if you want to talk about Samsonov, we can have that discussion as well. But yeah, Jones really, honestly, has been kind of a fun story. It's a small sample size, but still, he's played well. For Arizona, and I'm going back and forth on this a little bit, I want to put Carcone. Because Carcone, at the time that Arizona picks him up, and he's doing really well in the AHL, I still didn't think he was going to end up in the NHL. I figured, like, well, he's a farmhand. It's good. He's playing well down there. Carcone has been a basically part of that roster from day one this year, and he's been good. But for Arizona to round this out, it has to be Sean Durzi. Sean Durzi arrives from LA, known as basically a power play merchant, not good 5-on-5, but his overall numbers are fantastic this year for Arizona. They've done it again. They've picked up another player, another defenseman, and turned his career around. They do it with defensemen. They're quite good at it, and yeah, Durzi's a good example. You look at Kesselring. There's every reason to think he could have top four upside to his game. Valimaki, I think, has been better for Arizona generally than he was towards the end of his time with the Flames. And yeah, this is a team that gets it done. But to me, it had to be Durzi because he's been a lot of fun to watch for Arizona. And again, as a fan of Durzi's game, it's been nice to see a team where he really truly fits. But let me know your thoughts. Which player do you think has benefited from a change in scenery in the National Hockey League, and which ones haven't? Let me know your thoughts on that too. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and don't be surprised if I do a 32-team video where I look at players who haven't benefited from a change in scenery and have the logos on the board again. So thank you guys so much for all your support as always. If you've not already hit like and subscribe, it's greatly appreciated. I encourage it for now. I never encourage the bell though, the whole notifications, because I can tend to post videos at any time, day or night, and I wouldn't want somebody to get woke up in the middle of the night and say stupid hockey guy posting video in the middle of the night. And since viewers are from all around the globe for this channel, that's why I don't mention the bell. If you want to get notifications, you can, but just again, it's one of those beware kind of things. Thank you guys though for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.